Good morning and welcome to Wellspring. Good to see you all here today. There is some room in the front if we get any new folks. Oh, okay, yeah. So my name is Edward Burlbaugh, and I'm one of the spiritual leaders here at Wellspring, and definitely want to welcome you today to another amazing Sunday service. So I'm wondering if you all have had one of those mornings already.
Yes.
Good. I just wanted you to know I expected it to be an amazing morning. I'm glad that's where it seems like your mind went. That's fantastic. So we have a few announcements. As you know, Early Birds meets on Sunday mornings. We are on Zoom, and we also have a couple of stations here in one in the sanctuary and one over in the Blue Room. So if you want to come in person, you're welcome to do that and sit in there as well. Right now we're reading the Eric Butterworth book, Practical Metaphysics. And I think it's both metaphysical and practical. Well titled. All right. For May, our upcoming speakers on the 7th, we have Peggy Shin, and then we have Reverend Sandy Scott on the 14th. Jean Geringer is going to be here on the 21st, and then Reverend Kamatara is going to be here for the long weekend. Our Thursday evening group is still meeting. It meets Thursdays at 7 p.m. We meet here in the sanctuary and on Zoom because we have folks from Phoenix and Kansas City and everywhere else in the world joining us. We've been listening to talks by a number of speakers taken from the Heal Conference in 2019, so it's all about healing, of course. For example, Lissa Rankin, Mike Dow, Lynn McTaggart, Dr. Sue Morter, for example. And then we always have a bit of a lively discussion afterwards. So if you need to get on that, talk to me or to Cleona for that link and for more information. So, I want to let you know that our first quarter tithes went out. We sent $900, went to Richard Coltharp, who's a member, well, I haven't finished. He's a member of the Bulletin, and he's has a cancer drive going on right now. And we initially were going to give to 3 individual groups, but when we found out that he was taking everything he received and then giving it to those 3 individual groups, we wrote 1 check and let it be distributed, and Wellspring will get acknowledged for that as well. So that's fantastic. So thank you for your donations, because as you know, we take 10% of everything we've received over that quarter, and we give to charities, mostly local charities, occasionally international or national charities. May, we have our get-together on Sunday after service. We're going to have a potluck on the 21st of May. And just to give you a heads up, a month from now, Thursday the 25th of May, is the New Thought Ladies Luncheon, and that is held at CSL. And last but not least is our prayer team stands ever ready to serve and support you. You can submit a prayer request via our web page, or we have some sheets in the back there. And if you would give them to me, then I will make sure they get to the prayer group. And I'm part of that prayer group. And our prayer team meets Tuesday afternoons at 4:15 to pray with you. And I want to emphasize the with you part. As you know, prayer is something that requires participation in most cases. And so you may consider sitting in your quiet space during that time, because we know the spirit and energy of prayer knows no limits. And so we will have our invocation. So as we come together this morning, we cannot help but marvel at the beautiful roses that are outside our door here, all the blooming flowers all throughout Las Cruces, and we know throughout the world as well, as the time is right for spring. We know that this is a physical representation of the beauty of God, who is everywhere, all around us. And we particularly invite that presence here today into this sanctuary. And onto Zoom, everyone on Zoom is part of this. We know this energy flows through each and every one of us, and as a collective, it creates this bubble of acknowledgement of the greatness and the love of God. So we just hold this presence throughout this entire service, knowing that just the right and perfect words will be spoken today. The music will be beautiful as always, and will touch that place within us that reminds us of that divine being that we truly are. So we give thanks for this time that we spend together. We give thanks for each and every one of us here today. And we just know that this that we create today will have an impact on the entire universe. And so it is. So please stand if you're able for our song of joy. All right, you may be seated. And thank you, Barry. So let us read together our vision, mission, and affirmation. And if you can't see it up here, we have our little handout that also has it there, so you can read from that if you need to. So our vision, to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission, to support individuals' spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. And our affirmation, the blooming of flowers and trees around shows us that spirit expresses effortlessly in nature. We affirm and acknowledge that same spirit expresses through each of us, bringing our magnificence forward for all to see. And so it is. And now we have our special music today, Melody Burns.
Yay! This is a song by the Carter family. It's actually one of my grandfather's very favorite songs, so I think of him when I sing it, and he lived to be 98, so keeping on the sunny side must be a good thing to do. For those of you who are not familiar, you might have heard it in the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? You're welcome to jump in on the chorus if you wish. There's a dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright and a sunny side too. Though we meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side we also may view. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life. Though the storm in its fury broke today, crushing hopes that we cherish so dear, clouds and storm will in time pass away. The sun again will shine bright and clear. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life. Let us greet with a song of hope each day, though the moment be cloudy or fair. Let us trust in the Spirit alway, who keepeth everyone in God's care. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life. If we keep on the sunny side of life.
Thank you, Melody. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The reading today is from Science of Mind. And I believe I have it marked perfectly here. For the man who believes business is bad, for the one who thinks he has made many mistakes and will make more, for the man, or human of course, who sees nothing but inactivity about him, the following meditation might be used. I know that I'm now at the threshold of all good, wisdom, and truth. All good I can embody is now mine. I have only to open the portals of my soul and accept that which is ready to express through me. I expect fully and emphatically the answer to my prayer today. Right now, do I possess this thing I so greatly desire? I remove my fear of lack and negation, for it is the only barrier which stands in the way of my experience of good. I alone can remove it, and I do remove it now. In this moment, my good comes to me, enough and to spare, to give and to share. I can never be exhausted. my good can never be depleted, because that source from which my good comes is inexhaustible. Today, in this moment, the law responds to my thought. My word is one of affirmation, rising from the knowledge that the good, the enduring, and the true are eternalities in my experience. I cannot be apart from that which is my good. My good is assured me by God, the indwelling essence of my life. So today, we have someone who is familiar to many or most of you here. Perhaps some of you on Zoom have never met this lady. Our beloved Reverend Bonnie, who has spent 4 years at Wellspring as an outreach minister from the Center for Spiritual Living in Albuquerque. This was a number of years ago, but since that time, she has been the interim minister at Center for Spiritual Living in Las Cruces, in the heart of Las Cruces, and is now their permanent minister and spiritual leader there. But we are fortunate to have, well, we're fortunate that she accepted our invitation to speak here today. And some of us who've been here a long time have heard her speak before, and we know what a wonderful speaker she is. Speaker? Yeah.
Speaker.
I think we got somebody on Zoom who's probably not muted. So if we could take care of that. And, well, I heard some laughing in
I think it's me.
Oh, it's Bonnie.
It's me.
Oh, okay.
I'm already on.
She's already on. Well, I guess we got to get our editor to edit that. No, we'll leave it in. Okay. All right. So without further ado, Reverend Bonnie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Edward. Well, okay. Good morning, everyone. Okay, I see a lot of you in the back and a lot of empty chairs up front. Well, as Edward said, I'm Reverend Bonnie, and it's so good to be back in this space to see all of you and to just feel the energy of this wonderful place that we know as Wellspring. And I want to thank Edward for inviting me, and thank you for lending him to us in January. This little exchange is really nice. Well, if you get the Science of Mind magazine, you know that this month the focus has been on vulnerability, and that's what we've been looking at the centers, and many of you might have been reading it and looking at that topic as well. So I started this month off by speaking to this idea of see me. So I liked what your affirmation said, that part right there, what Spirit expresses through each of us, bringing our magnificence forward for all to see. I was looking at that concept of what does it feel like to be seen. And then as I was thinking about speaking here at Wellspring, I could picture this room, and I could see all of you the way it used to be. I could see Lawrence and Judith right up here, and Gail Ginn right here. I could see Vicki in the back, and Carol Dearborn, and some of those other folks that used to sit back there and raise all kinds of joy for us, and I hope Vicki's watching or will watch and see. I'm glad she's still present with us. And I thought about Geneva, usually somewhere in the middle there, and Betty and Don Minden with Donna and Harry Stryker right about in here. So to see Betty this morning during the early birds was quite a gift. And then all of you still sitting in the back, still sitting in these various seats. And then, of course, our beloved Nancy and Sam would usually be here if they were present when I was speaking. Sometimes Sam took the opportunity to have that Sunday off when I spoke. But it's just, I could see that. So I thought about seeing me and seeing all of you. So this morning I just called it See Me and See You, because I could visualize in my mind's eye still each and every one of you and those beautiful hearts and energy that I have been so connected to, and you've always had a place in my heart. Even though I moved over to CSL to be their community spiritual leader, my heart, I've always told them to, my heart is here. My heart has been here for many, many years. So as we talked about and thought about, as I did, this concept of vulnerability, coming back into this space had its feelings of emotions, which for me bring up feelings of vulnerability. Because being emotive in front of people is not always easy for me. It's I get that challenge, and I cry so easily that I'm like, no, I don't want to cry in front of all these people. And yet just thinking about all of you brought that emotion forward and that sense of vulnerability. And so I'm sure you all have heard of that word, vulnerable. Well, I will admit to you that it is not one of my favorite words. It's been a word that I think I've misunderstood over the years, or at least I haven't really related to. People would always say, well, you have to be vulnerable. And my thought was, why? I always felt like to be vulnerable meant I needed to put myself in harm's way, expose myself to danger, and I never understood why that was a good thing. Why was I expected to do that? And in my life, I sort of have this weird relationship with it going way back. The summer before I graduated from high school, which for me was a long time ago, back in 1975, I went on an adventure called Summit Expedition, which was like Outward Bound, if you're familiar with Outward Bound. It was a Christian sort of extension of that. And so I went on 3 weeks of backpacking, and they taught us rappelling and rock climbing, and they did snow and ice technique with us, so how to save ourselves if we were sliding down a snowbank. And they concluded it with a 3-day solo. In the 3-day solo, they gave us a little section of land that had a stream running through so we could drink the water. Back in those days, you could drink straight out of the streams. And they said, don't leave this area. And we had 3 days where we weren't supposed to eat. It was a 3-day fast. We did get the water. And they would check on us twice a day to make sure we were still alive. And then at the end of the 3 days, they gave us a little thing of candy so we could at least walk back to camp, and then they fed us again. And then they had us in small groups find our way out. This was in Yosemite. It was actually very beautiful. But then we had 2 days to get ourselves out from where we were to a base camp where we met up with all the other groups that had gone out on the same kind of adventure. So it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But one of the things they did is at the end of this event, the facilitators, the counselors, met with each one of us individually and shared their feedback. And so the gentleman that was leading it, his feedback to me was, you know, every time you went to take a risk, you calculated it so much and thought it through so thoroughly that by the time you took it, it was no longer a risk. And I thought, the problem with that is, you know, that makes perfect sense to me. And like, who wants to take a real risk, you know? But he really felt like I needed to experience more of the risk in life, that vulnerability. And so you can see that I've struggled with this concept from way back. And so when it came up in the Science of Mind magazine and as part of what the centers are focused on this month, I again went, why? Why are we looking at this word? Why do we need to experience this? So those of you who have heard me speak before know that I often go to the dictionary. I wanted to find out what is the definition of vulnerability. Maybe that'll help me understand this word. Well, what I found is that it's derived from the Latin noun vulnus, which means wound. And the Latin verb vulnerare, I'm not sure I speak Latin, but it means to wound. Well, okay, that didn't draw me in yet. And then the definition, susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. No, thank you. In need of special care, support, or protection because of age, disability, or risk of abuse or neglect. I'm still going, no, thank you. Capable of being physically or emotionally wounded. Someone who is vulnerable is weak and without protection, with the result that they are easily hurt physically or emotionally. I'm still going, why? Why do we want to do this? How is this a spiritual practice? Well, then I found what's called Wiktionary, a free dictionary online, that said vulnerability is open to disclosing one's inner thoughts and feelings. But then they added acting in spite of one's instinct to self-preservation. It's okay to get vulnerable every now and again. And then they said taking chances that might lead to rejection, sharing about one's mistakes. So I think that some of what they're looking at is that emotional kind of vulnerability, the ability to share our mistakes and being open to sharing. But then I thought about what Ernest Holmes had to say about mistakes. And I think that was sort of mentioned earlier today too. This is Ernest Holmes. If the obstruction is the result of a hangover of belief from past years, the practitioner, that's us, must know that no past mistake can hinder or obstruct the flow of divine intelligence through God's idea. God's idea, which is perfect persons manifesting the attributes of God in freedom, happiness, activity, and power, and that this truth is now made manifest in all life. And so even if we share our mistakes, it's a space where the truth of who we are gets to move forward and come forward. And so I decided to then go within the magazine and find out what they were looking at this month. What is it that they wanted us to look at in regard to vulnerability? And my favorite writer in this magazine is always Jesse Jennings, Reverend Dr. Jesse Jennings. And one of the questions that he was asked to answer was exactly my question. Vulnerability is touted as a desirable spiritual state, yet to me it means placing myself in harm's way. Why should I be eager to do this? And he says, the type of vulnerability discussed in this month's magazine is emotional openness leading into self-understanding. Well, that I can get behind. And he has more to say, and he concludes with, vulnerability then is embracing the uncomfortable, just as an aspect of love is becoming susceptible to grief. Emotional vulnerability allows us to see how we have attached inner meaning to outer circumstances, freeing us to re-enter long-lost innocence, trust, and wonder. Okay, that also is something that I could see and understand and get behind. It kind of reminded me of my early days in Codependence Anonymous. It's a group that I was a part of for a long time, even through here at Wellspring. We had a 12-step group that met here, and I was part of that because of Codependence Anonymous. And in that group, they taught us that often for those of us who identify as codependent, we never feel fully loved. And the reason is because even though we're all smiles and friendly and kind and helpful on the outside, you don't know what's going on in here. And we're afraid that if you knew what we really thought and what we really think, you wouldn't love us. And so part of what we learn through working those 12 steps then in Codependence Anonymous is, first of all, it says don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides. So what's going on in here for me, even though everybody might look all happy, yes, we're thinking positive, we don't know what's really going on inside, what they're struggling with. So to remember that, and it works both ways. And then through working those 12 steps, we can work with teaching ourselves to share our thoughts, our deeper feelings, what's really going on inside of us. And we do that with a sponsor or with the group, and we start to learn how to do that with our friends and here in classes that we might share with each other on a deeper level. And as we do that, we start to see that we can survive sharing who we really are, what we're really thinking. We not only survive it, but we're not judged as harshly as we think we might be. And part of why we're not is because we're also learning on this end not to judge others quite as harshly. Because we end up judging ourselves as harshly as we judge others. So that works together there. But we learn then that as we share our authentic self, it's okay. We can do that safely. We can do that in a way where it not only helps us heal, but it helps us bond and connect with others on a deeper level. Last month in the Science of Mind magazine, they were looking at authenticity, and the month before that at curiosity. So part of what I've been looking at and sharing with my congregation is, let's get curious about who we really are. Who is our authentic self? What is our authentic self? And how do we share that and experience that initial feeling of vulnerability, but then allow ourselves to connect on that deeper level because we've done that? So we've talked about removing masks. You know, I said I can be up here and be all smiles and happy and think positive, but sometimes that's not necessarily what I'm really feeling. How do we remove those masks, share the truth of who we are, what we're feeling, who we are and how God is expressing through us, feeling that vulnerability, but then allowing ourselves to connect on that deeper level. And so that's part of what I learned first in 12-step, and then of course got to enhance that teaching here as I learned who the truth of I am. How is it that I express, that the divine is expressing through me? It's God expressing in and through me. And so what originally felt dangerous, now I've learned it's okay. I can connect, I can open and be that person that lets God express more clearly through me. So when we talk about the power of vulnerability, I think that's where the power comes in. It's the ability to open, remove our masks, and connect on a deeper level. And then as I kept thinking about this lovely word, I thought about how it is when we do something outside of our comfort zone, when we allow ourselves to take a risk, like the backpacking that I did, like the learning how to rock climb and rappel, and all the other things throughout life where it feels risky, but it feels like something I really want to experience. When we do that, how we feel about ourselves afterward, when we really get to experience, wow, I did it. I feel the growth, I feel the excitement, I feel proud of myself, and I feel that inner strength. So many of you might not know, maybe some of you do, that I'm planning a trip in May. I'm going to be going to Scotland for 3 weeks. I'm traveling by myself. So yeah, people keep asking me, are you excited? I'm like, I'm excited, but I'm also a bit scared. I'll be honest, it's a little scary. I haven't traveled that far from home alone before. I do have someone that I will see there that I know, and I have family members that are joining me for a few days in the middle of it all. But the whole thing is really me getting to go on my own and do whatever I want to, whenever I want to. It sounds fabulous, and it's really scary for this person who loves to be home, who loves the comfort of home. But what I've learned is that excitement and fear are two sides of the same coin. So often when we feel fear, we're also feeling a bit of excitement about something. It's that unknown. And so I get to choose. Am I going to focus on the fear, or am I going to focus on the excitement? And so I choose to focus on the excitement. And when I do that, then I get to stay more open. And I'm more open to meeting new people, to doing new things, to having new experiences. And that word open is something I like a lot better than vulnerable. And yet when I started to think about it in the context of this month, I realized that being open and vulnerable are pretty much the same thing. We're talking about that same idea. And I thought about an armadillo, and how when an armadillo is open, its underbelly is soft and it's exposed, so it is more vulnerable. And then it can curl up in a nice little ball and protect itself and be closed. And I saw how when we as humans open, if we open our arms, our heart space is exposed. So we're more vulnerable when we open up like that. And yet at the same time, when I am more open, I get to experience life in such an amazing and wonderful way. So I've decided to look at what did Ernest Holmes have to say about a vulnerability and about power and openness. So I don't know if you know, probably you do, because you probably have it in your bookstore, that the Science of Mind text has a concordance. And a concordance is where you can look up a word and see how many times and where you can find it in that book. So we have one for the Science of Mind text. So I decided to look up vulnerable and vulnerability and see how many times Ernest Holmes talked about it. So how many times do you think he talked about it in the text? Judy's got it in the back. 0. 0. Not once. But there were 3 pages of entries of the word power, of all the different places that he used the word power. So Ernest Holmes' focus was on the power that we experience when we are open, when we let God express in and through us, when we share our mistakes with each other, because he knew there was no real power in the mistake. There was power in the sharing and the openness and the connection. And so we can open our minds and our hearts. We can open our arms. We can be in that vulnerable state, but it's the power that's still present. The divine is still expressing through us, whether we've made mistakes or not. And so one of the things that I found in there as I was looking this is Ernest Holmes saying, through our knowledge of the kingdom within, we are able to claim our power and dominion. And so I saw us not bowing down and giving away our power, but stepping into that power, knowing the truth of who we are. And so I thought, well, that's probably why I like this teaching. Because Ernest Holmes didn't talk about us being vulnerable. He talked about the power that we have and how to step into that. And so even if there's a perceived risk, is what I realized, if there's a perceived sense of vulnerability, the truth is we are still powerful. We're still the divine expressing through us in a very powerful way. So I would say then that vulnerability and this idea of fear is the same, and then we've got openness and excitement. It depends on what we want to focus on, where we want to put our focus, and how it is we want to step into the power that we are and the truth of our being. And so people have been asking me, how does it feel to be back here? How did it feel to think about coming here? And to be honest, there was a sense of vulnerability. You know, there was, oh boy, I served 4 amazing years up here with all of you. And I loved this community, and I had visions along with you of what this community was going to become and where it was going to go. And so I thought about, well, what are people going to think? You know, what new people might be there? What might they think about me? And what are they thinking about where I was and what I've done in the meantime? So are they going to focus on my mistakes, or are they going to focus on where I am today? Can we allow each other to grow and change? And will that be present, me for you and you for me? Or is there going to be a remembering of past and what happened and how did things happen and, you know, why did she make those decisions? So there's a sense of vulnerability in coming back to a place where you've been and where you've left your heart. And so I thought, okay, but what do I want to do? I want to be open. I want to bring that love and that light that's the truth of who I am and see that in you and have that connection. That's what I really wanted to experience today, and that's what I've been experiencing. So I'm, again, so grateful, but it's allowing myself to feel vulnerable and look at what's the truth and how do I step more fully into it? How do I step into that power that's really present? And so often when we focus on the fear, when we focus on what feels vulnerable, we're focusing on our failures, we're focusing on the things we're afraid of. And in the Spirituality and Health magazine from March and April of last year, there was an article that suggested that sometimes we might say, what's wrong with me, when we're feeling that way? What's wrong with me? Has anyone ever thought that? Yeah, what's wrong with me? And they suggest that when you start to think, what's wrong with me, instead say, what's strong with me? So shifting what's wrong with me to what's strong with me moves us into that place of stepping into our power and the truth of who we are. What's strong in me right now, in the midst of feeling vulnerable or fear? And so I started exploring this topic, like I said, at the beginning of the month, and one of our practitioners, Lillian Pilot, was at my house, and we were talking about it, and she said, well, you have to read Brene Brown. She has a lot of good things to say about vulnerability. And so I said, okay, I will, but I felt like I had enough to talk about, but I went ahead and looked her up, and this is one of the things that she said. Vulnerability is the birthplace of connection and the path to the feeling of worthiness. Vulnerability is not about fear and grief and disappointment. It is the birthplace of everything we are hungry for. Everything we're hungry for. And I think one of the things that we are hungry for is connection, is that feeling of belonging, is community. And one of the things that we've been looking at CSL, and not just mine, but I know several other places that are looking at it, is a book called Community by John Block. And it's looking at how to develop community, who you invite to the table in your community, how you connect, the kinds of conversations you have. It's really shifting how we think about community and how we develop community. You all are welcome to join in because you can take those thoughts back here and grow the same ideas in this community. We meet on Thursdays from 4 to 5 as we're reading through this book, and then we're going to take what we've read and kind of go back to the beginning and see how we might apply it in our communities. So one of the things that I've been talking to them about and we've looked at is the Center for Spiritual Living shares our space with Unity. And I have had some people concerned about, well, how do we know the difference between Unity and CSL? And people might confuse us. And then we have Wellspring up there. They're doing their thing. We're all part of New Thought, and we all want to grow our communities. How do we do that in a way that is true to our principles? Instead of getting into, oh, well, if they grow, what does that mean about us? You know, all that concern. I think we, as a larger New Thought community, have done a great job at working together, at seeing each other as part of the one, that we are different expressions of the one in our different areas. And it doesn't matter really if we get confused, if people go among us, and we know people go between all three of our centers. We know that. And so part of the work has been for me as a minister to say, that's all good. It's God. We're all one. And so we've looked at the feelings of vulnerability as we want to grow, and how do we stay in principle, remembering our oneness and keeping our focus there. One of the things that one of our speakers talked about was boundaries and the importance of having boundaries and knowing who we are and where we begin and end and all that sort of thing. But what came to me as I was thinking about this and looking and trying to answer that question for my board, well, how do they know the difference between us and Unity in the same building, is that God knows no boundaries except as they are expressed through us. And I didn't read that anywhere. That was a thought that came to me as I was processing this. God knows no boundaries except those that are expressed through us. And so again, I thought about CSL, Wellspring, Unity. We are all one in the eyes of God. We are all God expressing. And then I thought about all of us as New Thought, and then there's mainstream Christian and Judaism and Muslim and all the other expressions. In the eyes of God, it's all part of the one. It's all one. I thought about some of the things that have happened between Las Cruces and NMSU and UNM and Albuquerque and then UTEP and El Paso. There's a lot of competition and angst and horrible things that have happened in the last couple of years between these communities. But in the eyes of God, it's all one. Every one of those institutions is part of the one. I thought about those who vote blue and those who vote red and what's happened in our country lately. In God, it's all one. We're all part of the one. I thought about all the different gender expressions and sexual orientations and races and all this stuff that's up right now. And it's all one. It's all God expressing in a whole lot of different ways. So again, I don't think God sees any boundaries except those that we create through us as humans. And so it feels vulnerable at times to look at all those different aspects and say, ooh, I'm part of that. I'm part of, that's part of me. I'm part of the one. Again, Brene Brown, I promised folks when I was speaking, I'd bring her in. So here she is for you again. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is our most accurate measure of courage. So allowing ourselves to have those experiences when we're having conversation, inviting people to the table in our communities that we might not have ever had conversations with before, that we might not know what to say or how to say it, but allowing that to take place so we can have those connections, so we can deepen in our awareness of our oneness and our knowledge that we are all expressing God's power and truth and energy and love through us. And so I came here today choosing to focus on that, choosing to focus on the love that we experience in and through us, among us, that which connects us and keeps us all one. The love that I have for you, for all of you, in different ways. And many of you I know personally. And it's definitely, I'm not just talking love, each and every one of you. And I imagine some of you, I can't see you on Zoom. Some of you that I saw this morning on Zoom. Allowing those feelings to move me into spaces that feel vulnerable, that might feel scary at times, but trusting that that love is what connects us. That love is what is going to carry us through. And so that is why I chose to be seen and why I choose to see you. And so it is. And so let's just take a moment to bring that energy, that thought, that idea inward, to center into our heart space where love resides, where we are one with the one. And as we do that, we know that in this space right now is the energy of all those who have gone before us to help create this space, who have brought their love and energy into this space. And we know that each one of us that is still here brings that same love and energy. That is the consistent. Even though what is around us may change, love is the consistent. God is the constant. That energy is present in and through each and every one of us. And so I give thanks for that opportunity to come together, to experience it and express it. I give thanks for every place that brings these teachings into the community, for every person that walks their truth, steps into their power, allows themselves to be open and vulnerable and let that love through. I give thanks for the way it works. And so I know that our time together has been blessed. I know that this time together emboldens us and our communities, and that we continue to grow and invite people to the table. And so in gratitude, I just release this time together, this energy that we've shared, the love that is present, knowing that it is so. It is the mind of God expressing, as we say together, and so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Bonnie, for your vulnerability, the power of your words, the message, we are one. Thank you. The older I get, the more I appreciate the wisdom and spirituality of the Beatles. This is one of my favorites. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Yes, there will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the night is cloudy, There is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be. I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Well, certainly a day of gratitude. I know my heart's overflowing. And ever since we had that C word, we've left our offering basket in the back. And one of the things that I really miss about it being in the back is we pray over this virtual basket. So today, Dove, if you wouldn't mind, please bring the basket forward so we can pray over the offerings that have been made today. And if you, she'll wander her way up here so that if you have an offering you'd like to get in the basket and prayed over. You know, it's kind of like the loaves and fishes, folks. We talked about our, thank you, Dove. Yeah. We talked about, and I do like to be centered, you know. But we did talk about the tithing that our organization does. And you know that we tithe for two reasons, right? One is we acknowledge the gifts that we have been given, past tense, but we also acknowledge and rejoice in the gifts that we are about to receive. We know that God is good, and we know that the gifts are abundance and joy and peace and a lot of other things, but there is financial abundance in the presence. And so just please join with me as we bless these offerings that we have received. We know that we receive offerings on PayPal and through the mail, and we just give great thanks for all of those. We know that these provide the sustenance for our center here, and also, as you know, as we tithe out to other organizations, we just see this basket full and overflowing. We know that God is good everywhere, all the time. We acknowledge that, we accept it, and we give thanks for that. So it is. You can just put it back there, yeah. And speaking of acknowledging and accepting and giving thanks for folks, we have a few folks that have been supporting us technically in the back. And while Zoom has made our life easier, it has already also added some complication. But it is what it is, and we are grateful for those, our techies and our camera crew and everybody who participates in that. So we thank you for that. And also, we thank those of you who've been in Zoom land and those of you who are in person for joining us today. We know that the energy of just this building extends through the internet to everybody. The spiritual internet never has downtime. So stay if you choose to. Afterwards, we'll put the Zoom on so that you can speak to the folks here and we can see who's there. Anyway, we thank you for that. And also, after the Zoom meeting or after this service, we've got coffee and goodies over next door, so you're welcome to join us there as well. So now please stand if you're able and read with me the benediction, followed by our congregational song. And I want to point out that it will be up here, but also it's on this sheet in case I'll try not to stand in anybody's way. But Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature and flow through us into the world. And so it is. And now